AI takes a lot of power. They want to create a god AI, and it takes 9 nuclear power plants to create one.
Welcome to Upside, where we dig into the real news that lives behind the headlines affecting European venture. Today, we have a very special guest, Robin Haak. We've got Lomax, Mads, and my good self. But Robin, tell us a little bit about you and what you do and why you're fabulous.
What an intro. Hi, I'm Robin. I run a venture capital firm. It's a solo GP. It's called Robin, like me, Robin, but also Robin like the bird, like the red.
He has the best swag in the industry. If anyone gets any hands on Robin's swag, you will love it.
You can check it out on the website. If you like it, you can ping me, you get the code.
My t-shirt still hasn't arrived though. Just saying. Now, Robin,
yeah, we did international. We did international today.
Okay. I'll look forward to that. My DHL in about a month's time. Now, Robin Cap, just to give us a little bit of a kind of a backstory to Robin Capital. You are ex-operator, founder, ex-larger firm GP, and now you're a solo GP, which we are going to talk a little bit more about later, this new trend and this kind of growing into solo GPs. Sure. But you do pre-seed, seed, business software, enterprise focus, Europe.
So me as a person, it's Robin. I'm German. I'm based in Berlin. Yes, I invested in like 100 companies. I think I'm doing this for 15 years. 8 of them are unicorns. I have built a unicorn myself called SmartRecruiters. We were so fortunate to sell it to SAP. Like 2 months ago, we were making 100 million in ARR, profitable business, application tracking system. So basically, attract, select, and hire people. And we had, so I learned a lot about enterprise sales in B2B SaaS for a very long time, based in San Francisco, before in Berlin. And then, yes, I have been an investor. I started in M&A for Axel Springer. It's a big media company. I did early stage, and I founded an accelerator where I invested in N26. And then later, yes, I was one of 3 GPs building a firm called Revaya in Paris, Berlin, and London. It's now 600 million AUM. We are, I think, top 5% in Preqin, and invested in companies like Algolia. And I would say sweet spot is Series C. And I did this. And then ultimately, I thought about a product I want to do for the next 50 years. Like when I'm like 100 years old, once a week, I go there.
You're going to live forever.
And then I started the solo GP thingy.
So today, we are talking about, in the quick news, we've got banning social media. We've got this US request to play nicely with big tech. Please, Mr. and Mrs. European Union. A little bit on the UK budget. I know everyone is sick of it, but we have to touch a little bit on it. And we're going to look at some European success stories. Then we're going to do some deeper dives. Then we're going to lean on you, Robin, to dig into what's going on in Germany, the current stagnation, the automotive issues. Also, like you, Robin, solo GPs, solo VCs, and part-time VCs. We'll have a look at these new trends. And AI Corner, one for you, Mads, all of the latest good stuff in AI Corner. Now, on the quick news front, I don't know who, if anybody, wants to pick up on any of these things. So we've got banning social media. We've got Howard Lutnick, who is now asking, he's the US Commerce Secretary, is asking the EU to play nicely and let big tech do what it needs to do in Europe. We've got the UK budget. A little one, Mads, you might want to go into some of this new space surveillance. There's a new space surveillance for Europe initiative. Revolut at 75 bill and some other European success stories. So before we get on to Germany and specific and Robin, anything in there, Mads, anything in there that you'd pick up on?
Yeah, lots of good things. I think, or at least lots of interesting things this week. This social media ban, kind of the European Parliament has passed a resolution to say, look, we really need to think differently around how young people engage with social media and what we allow them to do and where we draw the lines, and especially where big companies should think about how to restrict access. Resolutions are not legally binding. It's just kind of advisory, for the Commission, and the Commission has no obligation to act. But I think the wider context is that we know that social media can be very damaging for children. There's been lots of longitudinal academic studies looking at the impact, especially for girls, where there is a clear correlation between a heightened social media use and depression or even suicidal thoughts. And of course, this is just terrible, kind of the impact it can have. And so we do need to think carefully around what we do with it. I think the proposal from the European Parliament is that we restrict kind of access for under 16s. And I have a lot of sympathy with that. As you know, I have sort of wonderful young ladies in this house that are exactly in those age
Matt.
groups.
You have
these
four daughters coming through.
Indeed. Yeah, no, and so it's something we have a lot of focus on, and it's not just us, it's all the parents, of course, around us. It is really a huge thing. And so I'm always really, really skeptical of heavy-handed legislation, but I must say that the academic, kind of the studies, we have the evidence from what's happening here and what social media is doing to, our young population is, it's just extraordinary, and it's very damning. And we do need to think about, whether it is time for more regulation around it.
I remember that there was something about it in the German parliament, and then they initially voted against it but there's two things. One was that I agree with everything Matt just said. The only problem about the regulation itself was, I think, that it would have allowed that the government in each individual country could have tracked whatever you write on WhatsApp. So it was like kind of a surveillance of 500 million people being like having direct surveillance on being able to access for whatever reason your WhatsApp and whatever you're writing. And this was why I think at least the German right now currently ruling, which is conservative and social, voted against it in the first place. And I think they made adjustments to it. But this is just what I've read a couple of weeks ago when it started.
I mean, look, the Australians have already banned this, right? They've already banned social media for under 16s. The Malaysians are about to do it. In Denmark, I think your home country, Mads, it's being heavily advanced now and proposed. In France, you've had to have parental consent to open social media accounts since 2023. So there have been movements, but the point that started off this segment is that Howard Lutnick was over in Brussels recently saying, look, you guys have got to stop doing this. You've got to stop regulating the hell out of big tech, which includes all of these things, even though we think they're very wholesome and necessary for society, because he's basically saying, look, this gets bundled into the whole tariff war discussion. And if you guys want tariffs cut on aluminium, on steel, on various other products, this all gets counted in, taken into account. And actually, Google was fined recently $2.95 billion by the commission for yet another kind of antitrust suit. So Google, for them, that probably is a relatively small amount of money, given that they're making $35 billion net income every quarter. But this is the US again saying, look, guys, I don't care about any of this stuff. These are our companies, and you got to take their services and products if you want to sell into the biggest economy in the world.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting discussion. The challenge I have with it a little bit is this conflation between antitrust and protecting our kids. Because I think they're actually two very different things.
I couldn't agree more with you, but Lutnick is bundling all in together.
Yeah, but we should help him untangle it. And I think the kind of the stock response from the EU was, we are not for sale, our principles are not for sale, yada, yada, yada. And actually, I think that's wrong. I think we should do a deal with Lutnick. I think some of the antitrust stuff is misguided. I think some of the DMA stuff is misguided. All these antitrust cases, it's always antitrust authorities trying to fight the last war, right? You had the IBM antitrust case. It was 13 years from the 60s to 82, and then it was dropped. I mean, it was kind of the Department of Justice's Vietnam, right? Just more than a decade of absolutely going nowhere because markets had moved on. You had the case against Microsoft, and you've had the case against Google. Every time they're fighting the last war. And so I have a lot of sympathy with let's just not waste as much time and energy as we are on the antitrust stuff now. And I think if there is a deal to be done, could that be a deal that says, okay, we'll do a deal with you on tariffs and DMA and antitrust stuff, but in exchange, we're going to need some concessions here on the other side, which is how do these social media companies interact with our kids? Because I think that's a much stronger case.
And this stuff is so powerful. I mean, I came off Instagram. I basically banned myself from Instagram. I just deleted it because, this stuff it's so addictive if you don't, if you don't control it.
It's heroin, 100%.
Yeah, I've not been on any social platforms for 15 years. I think the only one I'm on is LinkedIn, which I think is a necessary evil, but all the rest were sacked off 15 years ago. I do want to very quickly talk about the UK budget. If you're willing and able, Lomax, anything, to me, It felt like a bit of a kicking of the can. It felt like there was some moderate support for our ecosystem. It felt like it could be a lot worse. Not supportive enough, I would argue, but it didn't feel like anything too negative Nancy in there with regards to our ecosystem. But Lomax, any quick thoughts on UK budget before you all punch me?
Very quickly, let's just cover off the most important thing, which is she basically survived the most important test, which is the market didn't hate it. In fact, the market actually quite liked it. The pound has traded strongly since the budget, and at the same time, the yields on 10-year gilts have come down. So actually, the market, unlike in the case of Liz Truss, didn't hate the budget, which I think is the most important thing at the moment, given the precarious state that the UK is in. Clearly, there's a bunch of people, kind of middle, higher earners, who absolutely hated it. But I don't think we need to get into that and the politics of it and the welfare state. We've talked about that a lot before. I think the most interesting thing in direct startups is actually she's done some things which are helpful for startups, So they've loosened the rules around the EMI option scheme to make it apply to bigger scale-up companies, which is great because, we all know that having, as many employees as possible engaged in the equity of your company is generally more conducive to long-term success. So that's great. And I think the UK now has been ranked number one in all global stock option charts for friendliness to number two. And they've also relaxed the EIS and VCT rules, which basically mean that you can now raise more money through EIS, which I guess is good and not a bad thing, particularly for people who run those funds and people who invest in those funds and people who like those schemes. And I guess if she's taking more money out of your pay packet, then maybe, EIS, which can be efficient and reduce your income tax bill, is a good thing. So I think in a very narrow world that we live in, I think that's good. I mean, the broader stuff is a longer conversation that we don't have time for today. That's my take on it.
I want to just say very quickly, I've never heard a chancellor talk about startups, scale-ups, innovation, and she did. And I thought that was kind of cool. I don't remember. Well, maybe Cameron did a little bit, I guess, when he got kind of sucked into Silicon Roundabout stuff. But I thought there was quite a lot of focus on the importance of this next technical revolution and all of the innovators and the communities that are going to build it. And I found that quite warming. So I'm kind of pleased. Now, Mads, let's quickly talk about this space surveillance piece, because this was another little bit of interesting news this week.
Yeah, so the European Space Agency has enacted the first explicit military program. It's 1 billion euros for European resilience from space. And it was, defense is all the vogue and European resilience, and we got to be able to stand on our own two legs. And that's all very important. For context, the U.S. Space Force, they have one of those, spends $29 billion a year. And the total kind of U.S. government spends $70 to $75 billion a year on space. So we are still not quite reaching that level. But look, it's a step in the right direction. The Americans have said, and Trump has said, look, I'm kind of using this as a bargaining chip. If you're not going to fall in line with my view on how to end the war in Ukraine, I might just pull it all, and kind of the ability of Ukraine to defend itself will collapse without those surveillance capabilities. And obviously that is not in Europe's interest, and that's not necessarily how we think things should be done. So clear to me that a lot more is needed, but look, it's a welcome start.
Nice. Robin, I want to talk about N26. There's a bit of trouble at the mill. Co-founders leaving, sanctions being threatened, valuations being dropped. Do you have any inside scoop before we move on to a bit of a deeper dive into Germany?
Sure. I mean, not insights, right? But I was the very first Czech investor in N26. When they were still a credit card for children called Papaya, and then they made a pivot, and then Early Bird invested, and then Horizon Ventures and so on. And then they, as you know, in 2021, I guess in the peak, they raised a very big round. So the overall question would be, I guess, because Revolut is so big now, plus 70 billion, and did N26 have a chance to be as big if they would not have had founded in Germany? Right? Because some people would argue, I need to be careful what I'm saying now, but especially on banking and licenses and everything around fintech, arguably in Europe, Italy and Germany, some people would argue it's very difficult and bureaucratic. And the BaFin, the German Banking License Overview Authority, was banning them a couple of times for, potential fraud, scam. I think again, I need to be careful what I'm saying, but there were certain times again and again where they were blocked and they couldn't increase growth. And then they had a certain number where they were kept, that accounts they were max allowed to open. So there was enough demand, but they couldn't grow faster because they were kept to a certain number. I don't know what the number is, 10, 20, 30,000, but for sure they couldn't grow as fast. Their core market, and they wanted to expand in the US and UK, and they left this, and then they came back. And I think their core markets were Italy, Spain, France, Germany, somewhere around this. But especially in their core market in Germany, they then had massive trouble. So now there is a big talk about if bureaucracy, German politics would have been different and we would be more modern, could this company have scaled faster, bigger, and now would have been plus 10 billion too. And yeah, that's one. And then because of this trouble that happened over and over again, I can only quote from the newspapers, there has been a change in command. And then Valentin left and is in the board, and they just added 2 more board members, of which one is Jörg Gerbig came before. It's the founder of Takeaway. And so they're restructuring and professionalizing it. I guess this is all I can say from what you read. I do not have deeper insights, but this is one of the core thoughts on, do we need to make the German BaFin more lean, faster, and different kind of regulations instead of too much bureaucracy?
Can we talk about Lovable quickly and the VAT issue they've had?
Do it. Yeah, no, bring it to life.
Another entrepreneur, weirdly, in Sweden, who acted as a bit of a sleuth this week and put out, I think, a tweet or a LinkedIn message accusing Lovable of basically breaching all the European VAT regulations. And a bunch of people jumped in on both sides of the debate. So it's been a relatively lively debate in our industry this week, because it does appear that Lovable hasn't been in full compliance with, the European VAT rules, God bless them. And a bunch of people have used this, allegedly, but a bunch of people have used this as an example to kind of Europe bash. Say, well, actually, Europe is so difficult to do business in, tax, red tape, etc. I mean, you have sales tax in the US, so I mean, it's not a particular kind of phenomenon isolated to Europe. But I thought that Anton Osika's response was worth looking at. So he actually replied once things have settled down and basically said, look, Lovable just got called out for not paying VAT in Europe yet. Many came to their defense saying Europe isn't built for hypergrowth. And actually took a different line than people might have expected him to take, which maybe because he needs to show some contrition in front of the tax man, is basically saying, look, this is fine. We'll comply. We'll deal with it. It's actually still a great place to build a company. And, let's move on. So I thought that was an interesting kind of debate that took place in the market this week.
Has it settled?
I think, well, I think they're going to have to go and settle now with the tax man is probably what happens now.
Yeah.
Pay some fines.
So maybe there's more.
With the amount of money they're raising and the amount of money
come.
they're printing. Exactly, yeah.
Well, I want to stay with Germany. Off the N26 story, Robin, we're obviously seeing a lot of, I mean, we only hear one side of the story, and you can tell us what it's like on the ground, but Germany as this kind of mega European manufacturing hub is struggling. Q3 25 GDP, again, stagnant. Below 2019 levels still. 11,900 insolvencies in H1 25, which is the highest in a decade. And then counter to that, we've got this constitutional amendment, there's this debt ceiling lift, 500 billion euros, infrastructure stimulus, but there are some challenges around that where we're possibly not going to see the benefits until 27, so no time, maybe year 2 in. But what's the story on the ground, Robin? What's the reality that we don't see, feel, or hear? And obviously, as a GP investing in Germany and across Europe, does any of this affect you at all, or is it heads down and build and you don't care?
No, it's massive. It's everywhere. Like, I can go to the restaurant next door and they have 40% less revenue per month. And I can go to my favorite wine bar, beer bar, restaurant everywhere. It's like down 20 to 30 to 40%. People struggling. And now in 2021, they still went down, COVID up, then there was Ukraine war, then again they put some savings, but now people are out of savings. You touched on so many things when you entered this, so I need to, debunk, maybe give some background here. I think one is historically, we were growing to some extent well, but Angela Merkel as a chancellor, for the last agenda we really had in Germany was before Angela Merkel, it was Gerhard Schröder, and he made something called the Agenda 2010. So that was the last time we had like a massive restructuring for social welfare and all of these things. And our well-being is based on everything that happened before, and this guy who set the foundation. And it's funny because he's social, but he made a very conservative program back then. And then you had Angela Merkel living off this, you could say, for 16 years and managing the wealth, but we didn't invest much in, new technology, infrastructure, all of these things. And then the CDU became, like, who's Angela Merkel was the chancellor of, became old, didn't really had the chance to recalibrate, and they became fat and old. And so because of this, they tried to win with the chancellor, was not strong enough, so he lost. And for that reason, we had a coalition the last 3 years that broke, which was out of the Liberals, the Greens, and Social SPD. So SPD, FDP, and Grüne. And these guys, you could arguably say that Robert Habeck, who was our economy minister, was the worst minister in the history of politics ever. And you can see it in every graph, that you see this COVID thingy where it goes down, then it goes up, and then every other country in the world goes up. Just Germany goes down, and especially in manufacturing, industrial, and so on. Because all these dreams, and some people will hate me now for saying this, but all these like green steel, ThyssenKrupp didn't work out. We are not able to produce competitively against anyone in the world there. And it was the same with all the electricity and the infrastructure that's just not there yet, and it would take longer. And then proactively shutting down 6% of where our electricity came from the safest nuclear power plants in Europe. ISA 2 in Munich was the safest nuclear power plant in Europe and the most modern. And they shut it down proactively and saw our electricity prices rise. Then, as you know, because of Macron and some other acts, nuclear power plants became green in Europe. So now Germany had to pay, because we had the fallback is coal. So we're producing electricity now of coal. So our green minister basically made us the most dirtiest producing country in Europe. And so electricity is one, because I also think the future will be based on it. And Germany has a massive problem on having enough infrastructure for electricity, and all these gas in between emergency thingies that we wanted to build. This not working out, and it's now 2035 and no one knows, and they wanted to do it green again. Again, they don't have a solution for it. And so one is electricity. And then two, for sure, is bureaucracy. It became like an unbelievable monster from building, and they all promoted each other. So while also the Greens and who were there in for the first time ruling, so of course they were here and there trying to bring up their own people. And then you have this massive amount of billions of euro going into NGOs. So it was a complete nightmare, and our wealth was going down, and we can't fix it now. And then it broke. And then we had new elections where our new chancellor, Friedrich Merz, came in saying, we will not take more debt. We will have less bureaucracy. We will find the solution for the electricity problem, all these things. And we have a migration problem, because we're paying, 54 billion into social welfare every year. And now, if you look at our GDP and what we spend every year, we are completely stuck. We're making minus because we don't put anything into education, school, infrastructure, etc. Because everything now is eaten by social welfare, of which, and again, don't hate me here, of which the majority, or more than 50%, is migrants. And the other thing is that it's the same for healthcare. The system can't carry it anymore, right? And at the same time, we are not growing, so we can't pay for it. Okay, what did they do? So they lied to us, and they say we're taking on, I think, 800 billion or something new debt. So we would invest this into infrastructure and defense and schools and everything I just mentioned, which we have not, because it's taken by social. And so it was a lie that they will not increase it. So now every person in Germany has a debt, instead of 30,000, I now have a debt of 70,000 per person. social welfare is eating everything. Migration is completely out of control, and nobody knows where the future goes. And people going to Poland or other countries in Europe, or even leaving Europe.
Gosh, Robin, what's the bad news?
If you look at Czech Republic or Poland, especially Poland, who are increasing in GDP, right? What do they do? We don't do. And there are certain things. And it's clear what the problems are. I just mentioned all three of them: bureaucracy, migration, and electricity. And we're not changing it. So,
I've got a stupid question for Robin and possibly for the room. Why don't they recommission the nuclear power plants?
It was ideology. It was because there was Fukushima in Japan. So the risk is different in Germany, and also different reactors. But it was out of ideology. And it was played with fear. When America or Russia play with fear of war to get elected, in Germany, people were playing with the fear of nuclear or climate change. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying no climate change. I'm just saying they are proactively using media, NGO, etc., to bring fear into the society to get elected, and being against nuclear power plants.
Even with what everybody now knows in the press and they possibly read and see and consume on a daily basis, there's still no hunger or appetite to recommission nuclear.
75% of the German society, of the people living here, want this for a decade now. The politicians who are ruling Germany are representing the minority, because the ruling party is handcuffed by the smaller partner, the SPD.
There's no doubt that Germany is the locomotive of Europe, and we're not going to see high European growth if we don't have Germany growing. So, clearly we have all these challenges, but from your perspective, how do we solve this?
I don't think that in this legislation there will be a solution. So I'm not sure how it is in UK, and I'm happy to hear from you. In Germany, I also think that there will be an election in 3 years from now, and then we need to see where it goes after. But with the current parliament setup, and the SPD blocking everything that would be to some extent middle liberal, and I'm not even making liberal, I'm talking about the liberal, because things that has been in the center is now right.
How does this flow through to the startup ecosystem, Robin, and sentiment and what's going on in our world?
Yeah. I think at the one hand side, a couple of things are done that are good. In France, you have the BPI France, and in Germany, you have KfW, and they receive billions, and it's good because it goes into the funds, and from there it gets reinvested. So I think this is good. Slightly, sometimes they make some adjustments. So we had like the worst ESOP. You talked about it earlier in the world. Now we still have a really shit one, but we pay 50%. But at least when you leave the company, you don't have to pay immediate on money that's not there. So you pay when the cash flows finally. So now at least you're not going, you're not private insolvent when you work in a startup.
I did notice that Germany used to have terrible rules, and it just got changed recently.
So that was before. So if you left a company, they would take the book value and charge you for this, or you leave it and you don't take it. And they changed this to now you pay 50% on your ESOP, or 47.5. And the taxes are so high for everything you do, and especially on salary, that this is all difficult. And and we had the Reichs, what was it? My grandparents had to pay it. You pay one time 1% of all your wealth, and they are considering this again. So right now, what's happening is they're going down. They took the debt. Then the debt will be empty, and then they will come after everyone who's still here, and will squeeze it more and increase the taxes. Until there's nothing left. Now on startup, we have this horrible notary system where you have to be there in person, and if you do it somewhere else, you have to do apostille and translate to German and send it here, and then something is wrong, and sometimes it's blocking the deal so much. And I've seen this even with Andreessen or Atomico or anyone doing something wrong, that then it took again another 8 weeks, and then the startup was insolvent because they couldn't put it in the register and they couldn't transfer the money. So by the process of it, and there's a strong lobby, they will not adjust this. And so you see that many startups, and you know that some people are fighting for a European solution on going IPO and on the stock market. Some people are fighting for a European solution on Andreas Klinger, as you know, on having one entity. But right now, of course, many startups doing a C Corp, Delaware, and then below there is a German GmbH, which they're operating on, they're living here. But ultimately, the holding structure is in the US.
It's really interesting hearing the inside scoop from a German about Germany, because there's a depth that we don't get in the press here. So that's really interesting. One quick question before we move on. Will the automotive industry in Germany be rescued by the defense push, do you think? Is there a balancing or a recalibration of what was automotive focus now shifting into defense, whether that's kinetics or other, now that China is kind of pushing in? How will that work, do you think?
Yeah. I mean, you know, I'm invested with Robin Capital. I'm invested in Arx Robotics. So I'm also seeing a little bit. It's one of these big. There's Helsing, there's Stark, there's Arx. There's a couple. There's like five big ones. Arx, one of them. So I'm seeing a little bit what's going on. So the one thing is, of course, these budgets that are now being used is for the next 5 years. So if there's war in Ukraine or not, this is happening, right? But it's overall, if you think about it, like Volkswagen, like 600,000 people working there. And then Rheinmetall, who produces these leopards, what is this? This is now 80 billion, maybe, and on a 9x revenue multiple. So you could arguably say high before it was like 1.5 to 3. So in current times, just very up. So, but you could say it's overpriced. So maybe it's not the real price. So maybe the company is only worth 20. And then if you add all the others to it, like Diehl, Heckler Koch, or Deutz, or Renk. What's Renk? Renk is like 5-6 billion on the, it's stock market trade, but 5-6 billion. So if I put all of this together, even with the current trading, it's less than 150 billion. That's good, but it's not so much. And it's increasing, but even if it would double, it would not be so. There's only EV, right? This is the enterprise value market cap. It's not the revenue. So if you divide it then by 7, so even if it's 300 billion, it's producing, let's even say 10x, right? Then it's 30 billion revenue. It's not so much in total. But yeah, it's good, but it's not enough.
I hope we can go back to actually building things that we can, build and make and export and enjoy as civilian goods, and not just for defense. But clearly there is a shorter term need for us to arm ourselves here in the face of Russian aggression. Actually, Robin, I wanted to go somewhere else, kind of a question for you. We've sort of talked a lot about and agonized a lot over Brexit here on this side of the channel over the last few years. I've always thought there was a natural ally in Germany, and kind of in many ways, the German economy and the UK economy, they were great partners and have a lot of sort of ways they can help each other. But I guess a question from my side is, how is this seen on the German side? What's the view in terms of how the countries should work together going forward? And how do people think about the EU and the UK post Brexit?
I mean, I almost cried the day there was the Brexit. I love the British. I love UK. I love Europe. Also shortly, because it became very political. So maybe let me shortly position myself. I think I'm very liberal, tolerant, open, pro-pluralism, and socialist. I am pro-welfare. I am pro-Europe. I am an international person. I am the most open, tolerant person you can imagine. And when I saw UK leaving Europe, it was so sad for me, right? And UK, I think, and maybe I'm arguably wrong, but I think UK people were voting for this because they wanted less migration, and they were afraid that because of Angela Merkel, they had migration. I love what we have created here. We had wars for thousands of years, and we have created this union that is free and trades for now, so I want to strengthen it. And I think the same for everyone living in Germany, very pro UK.
One of the answers is growth. Like people are happy when they got money in their pockets and they feel there's opportunities. So basically, ultimately, politics is fixed by the economy, and Germany's flatlining, UK's flatlining, apart from Poland and Spain and a few other countries in the Baltics. GDP growth is flat. And that starts to expose a whole bunch of problems. One thing's very interesting, chatting to Americans, they think the UK is a complete basket case for some of the reasons you just said, but also from a civil liberties kind of standpoint. Many Americans think we live in a police state, and we haven't got freedom of speech. We get locked up for saying stuff that we shouldn't.
I want to talk about this new movement of solo GPs, solo VCs, and even looking at Carlos Reyna from who's the GTM at 11 Labs. He's a part-time VC. He's not even a solo VC. He's a part-time solo VC. But Robin, as a solo dude, tell us your thoughts, track the good, the bad, the ugly about being a solo dude.
So I think it's just also the Americans did it first. They started 10 years ago, and there you have like Orenzeev, Elad Gil, Lucky Groom, and arguably Elad Gil is likely in the top 10 best GPs alive, and now raising $1.5 billion as a solo GP. And they made a survey where they asked 4,000 GPs in America who are the best brands to invest, like to get investment from. Number 1 was Sequoia. Number 2 was Elad Gil. Number 3 was Founders Fund. So Elad Gil made it before like big venture firms being alone. So this product, and Josh Buckley there are so many there that I could name that are very famous, doing great job and great performances with plus 5x DPI every fund. And even big funds, and even leading growth and leading early, depending what they do on there. But everything is possible. I think it's very attractive for some founders. And now you on this part-time, I just want to differentiate the category of people doing this. I think there's someone like me or someone like Ramzi Risk from No Label. He invests in migrants. I love him. He's a fantastic guy. And he left KKR after almost 10 years, and he did this because he loves what he do. He wants to work with these migrant founders who are doing an outstanding job and wants to support them. And when you ask him, he says, I want to do 20 funds in my life. I want to do this in the next 6 years. And then you have another example of people who have been employed maybe in a VC fund, and they really love it and they want to start their own firm, but they cannot raise 100 million tomorrow, 250 million tomorrow. So what they do is they start being a solo GP. An example would be Maximilian Schwarz from Nucleus Capital. Again, I absolutely love this guy, deep respect for what he does. And he started with his first fund, number 1, and he made it and he did great investments. And then he used this to enter becoming a VC, and now he has a partner, Isabel, and they have a venture capital firm with, I don't know, 40, 50 million, and they're doing a fantastic job. So first of all, you have these two, right? Am I a solo GP forever, or is this just an entrance into venture? And then there's the third one, which is rare, is a part-time. I saw the comments, someone was complaining, another solo GP, that this is not good, that it's part-time. The guy I don't know, but my venture partner is Carolina she's the former GP from Credo, which is one of the best performing CEE funds ever. And she's great. Obviously, she's my venture partner. She's the greatest person I know. But she works with this guy and said he's absolutely amazing. And what you see is a fragmentation in the market, that certain people have certain access in certain areas, and then they are worthy to be funded and financed. And this guy, as you can tell, like you saw on his LinkedIn post, Sendana, and he had like all these tier 1 funds invested in him. So basically, I think
$15 million, right?
Two things here on
30 million euros. It's not like he's gone off and raised 1.5 bill.
Exactly. So I think it's absolutely fair. I heard he does a fantastic job and he's great. He has great access. And if you want to, if you're a fund on fund and you do 35 investments, and one of it is I want to invest around great founders in the universe of what he does in defense and AI and 11 Labs and surrounding, then I chip in money there. And a couple of other people thought this too. And I think someone made a comment, and now I'm finishing, but someone made a comment and saying, it's great. You will do it in your first fund, and then you will do the second fund full time. Because as everybody knows here in this group, including myself, you have fund admin and all of this work, and it will take a lot of time from you. And when you raise your second or third fund, at some point you have to do it full time. So likely it's a start for him, as I mentioned earlier, and then he will likely pivot or convert or evolutionize into being full-time solo GP if he does 2 or 3.
Mads, any thoughts from you on the solo GP front?
I think it's great. More VC investments, more people backing more great founders. Let 1,000 flowers bloom. I'm all in favor.
Yeah, bring it on. Well, let's move on to AI Corner, Mads, your happy space. We have a whole bunch of stuff.
So OpenAI, I mean, there was an interesting piece in the FT this week saying that OpenAI was a money pit with a website on top. Of course, that's slightly clickbaity. The quants over at HSBC have done a little analysis saying that for OpenAI to honor the spending commitments they've made with the hyperscalers and others in terms of all the capex build out they've been talking about, running into in excess of $1 trillion, with some revenue assumptions and money coming in, they'll still have to raise another $207 billion by 2030. So that's $40 billion a year for the next 5 years, which obviously is a staggering amount. It is more money than the US venture ecosystem raises and invests in an entire year. So that is quite a lot of cash. I would say that some of these assumptions are, obviously they're determining how kind of where you end up on that calculation. And I do still think there's a strong case for OpenAI ending up making an incredible business, but they are not the given winner anymore. I mean, as we've seen just in the last few weeks, Anthropic keeps powering ahead. The new Opus 4.5 is formidable in coding. We've seen Google come out with Gemini 3, which is a fantastic model, beating OpenAI on, I think, 19 out of 20.
And Warren Buffett investing in Google
benchmarks.
Now. Really?
Yes, and I can see why, because the Google took 3 years to wake up, but boy, are they back. And the tech they're turning out is incredible.
So they know something we don't know. What do you think about? Because you made all these comparisons, right? And now people bought secondary OpenAI on this price, like even friends of mine. And I'm like, whoa. And then at the same time, you see Warren Buffett doing the exact opposite. He sold, didn't do anything for years. And then he's like, let's go Google.
Yeah, let it rip. No, Google is a fantastic business. It seems like they're out of the worst of the antitrust shenanigans for now. It seems that OpenAI is surprisingly moving slowly on monetizing ads. They've got their 800 million users, just a small fraction are paying. I think 5% are paying today, so a small proportion are monetized. The way to monetize the rest of that long tail is ads, and I don't understand why it's taking them so long, because I think they're vulnerable until they get it right for two reasons. A, you could say they may not need the revenue, but it will be nice. You could say for now they can fund with debt, but obviously they can grow a lot faster if they can monetize a larger proportion. But B, it is the biggest single threat to Google, right? It is that OpenAI will start taking Google's ad revenue dollars away. And with all the users they have, I think there's a real case to be made that they could be. So I'm sure Sam has a plan. He's a brilliant founder. But gosh, this continues to be one exciting showdown between the two.
It's exciting. I think it's exciting.
Man. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
I'm always torn between the commoditization and productization angles of this, and who's going to buy who, how it's going to roll up or not, who's going to productize first. Will Johnny Ive and Sam Altman build a thing? Will Google buy Anthropic? I'm massively intrigued by this space. But Mads, what else is there in AI Corner this week?
Absolutely. So, what are the big takeaways from November? Well, if we go back sort of 10, 11, 12 months, people were starting to say scaling laws, maybe we've hit the wall, maybe we can't keep scaling, maybe just, putting more processors at this, more GPUs won't quite do it. And I think some of that was put to bed this month, because we saw Google sort of saying, look, we've got the money. We got the talent, we've got, all the tech, we've got our own TPUs, and we are going to brute force this baby. And they've created some incredible tech that has come out of all that scaling power and prowess. And what does that mean? Well, the scaling laws certainly aren't dead yet. There is more to go and more to do. A lot of that was powered by the TPU. They started that journey kind of creating their own AI chip more than 10 years ago, before the transformer was invented, right? Before we had LLMs, they could see that there would be a big need for processors that could do this type of
they
deep
invented the
learning,
transformer as well, didn't they?
Number crunching. Did indeed. Now, all the authors of the Attention is All You Need white paper that originally outlined the technology since left Google. And when ChatGPT was released 3 years ago, and, happy birthday, ChatGPT, it will be your birthday by the time our listeners listen to this. By the time that they released it, Google had not productized the tech, and it was several years later. And so they were really caught flat-footed, but they mobilized. and they brought the founders back in, right? Sergey Brin is back in the lab, every day of the week building AI stuff. And obviously the power that came out of DeepMind and Google Brain and the TPUs and all the data they have is a really, really formidable list of ingredients to put together these powerful models. So yes,
and
very exciting.
Burry shorting AI feels like a bunch of noisy nonsense. Do you agree?
Look, there will be winners and losers in this game. I think shorting AI as a category is just dumb. Because, you think about how we work today and how we worked 3 years ago and how absolutely transformed everything is. And I can't imagine going back to a world without AI. I use it for everything. And, OpenAI does not have 800 million users from nothing. This is massive and world transformational. Yeah, are there companies that are overvalued now? Of course. Are there companies that are undervalued now? Absolutely. Are there good deals to be made on either side of that bet? Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But as a category, no. We're still in the foothills of this.
He's only gone.
This is not investment advice, by the way. Always do your own research.
Thank you for the caveat. I mean, he's shorted Palantir and Nvidia, but Robin. So any thoughts on the big melee that is AI, maybe from a German perspective?
I mean, one thing is that what I said earlier is more in politics, that AI takes a lot of power. They want to create a god AI, and it takes 9 nuclear power plants to create one. Eric Schmidt, I think 3 months ago on this TEDx in Canada, literally saying, someone asked from the audience, what if China has it first? And then he answered then we have to bomb it. They are all super afraid of this whole God AI thing. It's the next level, because what we're doing now is kindergarten. Now we can use a 160 IQ person to do whatever we want. And then it's also only everything it does is what we filled it in, right? So it's recreation of something that already existed. But then this God AI obviously could create a new universe if it wanted.
But I'm assuming that destroy the God AI was not to destroy the Chinese, but to destroy the technology that could destroy the globe. Is that
obviously?
Am I reading? Yeah,
this was the idea. Yeah. So it's they are afraid of someone has what is it from Terminator called Skynet. So they are afraid someone is doing Skynet.
It's all right. We got our own Miles Dyson.
Kind of afraid
we'll send him in to blow it up. It'll be fine.
Yeah. So, but this is one, and then in 2 is it's all about to some extent electricity and power, that you can power all of this. And Germany is for sure short on it. They made a prediction over the next 10 years, and we don't have enough power to power it. The other countries are more well off on AI, I think. If you're a big AI company that needs a lot of electricity and you create data centers, you may be choosing a different country than Germany. Other than this, on data layers, there's this idea of America does these kind of companies, and we in Europe, we create the Spotifys, right? So I think there's no lack of Germany having the opportunity to create the next AI Spotify, whatever it is. On that layer, I think everything is obviously every day possible. And I think 11 Labs is a fantastic example of, or a Lovable or whatsoever, of European great examples of doing it fantastically and riding the wave. And there will be, I guess, people always say, yeah, you need to be in one of these 3 preeminent companies a year. And it's probably more likely 10 or more that will have fantastic outcomes. So it's all possible. And Germany, equally as every other country, can achieve this. We have the right engineers in universities. The only thing I would argue is that an amazing American engineer, it's like a VP, whatever, at Google or Apple, is not likely to move into Germany, right? It's not as attractive anymore. Yeah. This I have to admit, but we still have CDTM, RWTH, ETH Zurich, German speaking also to some extent, right? In Switzerland and Austria. But we have these great engineers coming out of university and building and producing, and I think it's great. So the environment and culture is good, and especially on deep tech now in Munich and all over, I think there's fantastic new founders every day creating, and I'm actually very positive on this because I was very negative all the time on politics.
Yeah, I can feel the energy
on
shift
this and people wanting to create. Yeah, because now it's very different. One thing is what are politicians doing for us, and I'm unhappy with it. And this is what you felt when we talk about politics. But if we talk about people creating and producing and so on, I'm very proud of every founder getting out of bed and doing something. And I think there's a great new generation, also young people, even younger than 20, out of university or not, or dropout and so on, and just creating even earlier. When I started, PhD was still a thing. And now it's let's go and fucking build. and on robotics and in manufacturing. It's fantastic, and I'm seeing this every day, and I'm amazed. Also on, you said it earlier, on space and space defense. I saw a deal that the first biolab in space, and another deal they make satellites so they could real time tell defense like tanks where to go and avoid mines or whatsoever. And it's great. I'm fascinated every day. So yeah, the energy is shifting because I'm super pro on Europe and also on Germany, also on this creation and all of this. The only thing is, I just don't like our politics giving us a hard time doing it.
Yeah. Well, I love that we ended on an upside. Thank you very much for lifting that at the end there. Mads, anything before we close off? Any final thoughts? Anything happening this week? Any?
Well, what's happening this week is it's December right ahead of us. We're on the final runway to the end of the year.
Q4 25. Wow.
Yes.
Robin,
I'm having
what are
my
you up
first
to?
close in 2 weeks.
Of course, because you're awesome. How big is this fund, Robin?
Same. I had 1.515 and now I'm doing 1.515. 50% target. We started raising 1st of October. So I'm very, very thankful. You know how hard it is that within a short amount of time, on only 2 months, we have been managing to do 50%. We have a first close on 11 December, I think. And I'm now working on the first 4 deals, of which one is biotech in space and the other is satellites for defense. So yeah, I'm riding the wave, and another one is robotics in Munich. So I'm excited about all of this, and I'm excited for this fund and continuing working with amazing founders.
Well, I love it. Well, let's end there. You are both a gift, and I love you dearly. On and up, my dear fellows, and I'll catch you next week.